Hello. April 2nd, 2020. We got this thing going around called COVID. It's really stressing a lot of people out. And unfortunately, it's stressing a lot of healthcare workers out too. Sitting in the back of an ambulance, transporting sick patients for 5 hours at a time, completely gowned up. Supplies are low. I got one face mask for the whole day. I was told that I need to use it for the whole day because there's only 2 boxes in the hospital. Kind of scary times. We're all trying to keep sane, all trying to find things to do. And now the bright side of the news, Jim. So the one thing positive that we've had is that I've had a little more time to work in the shop. Not much, but a little bit. And my wife and I, we've decided that our young friend, Glenn Hoffman, needs a tool tote. And the reason why is that Glenn is graduating from high school this year, well, trying to graduate from high school this year, and I'm sure he will. And he has shown the inclination to become a avid maker in my mind. I think that's what he'll endeavor to be. Wants to be an aircraft mechanic, but whatever trade he goes into, I'm sure that a tool tote would be a good thing for him to have. So I have endeavored to come up with some plans to make a tool tote out of some of the items that I have in my scrap wood box. There's only a limited supply of wood in my scrap wood box, and because all of the local stores are closed or on limited hours, I can't go down to the local store and get any wood. So I got to make do with what I got. It's a bit of a challenge. It's a challenge time-wise because currently young Glenn is in the hospital. He's undergoing surgery as we speak, or had surgery or something like that. Anyways, he had a ruptured appendicitis. And I know that ruptured appendicitis aren't fun. Having lived through that myself, it can be painful and you're put out for a few days. The other not too good side of the story is that with the recent COVID pandemic stuff going on, nobody can come visit him, so he's on his own, but he's a tough young fella and with a great imagination. And so I'm sure that he will survive just fine. You may see this video before you actually get home. I don't know. And before you actually get your gift in the mail. As I'm creating this video, it is in the mail. It should be there within 5 days. Watch your post box for the notification. So I started out and I ended up going to my scrap wood bin, and I recently have done a couple of projects. One that I videoed, one that I didn't. Sorry that I didn't, but my little minions, or as I call them, my sanding cabinets, I created. They end up looking like minions, so I call them minions. And I had some leftover hickory boards, very short pieces, not very wide pieces. So I had to come up with an idea on how to put it all together to make them a tool tote. So the normal process that I follow is taking the boards to the jointer, joining a face, joining an edge. Then to the thickness planer, and basically seeing what I got left and putting all these pieces together. I wanted to do a box joint for the edges, but I just couldn't because the tool tote would have ended up like that narrow, and I didn't want it to be that narrow. It has to hold tools and it has to be useful. So what I did is laid out the sides and the ends, and I drew the pattern that I wanted, and I actually used dominoes to do the joinery. And it turned out pretty interesting, I do believe. The other issue that I had was putting a bottom in it. I used a piece of pre-finished plywood that I had kicking around because it was about the only 3/4 inch piece of plywood I had left. All of the edges of the box I applied a round over to. Just a simple 1/4 inch round over. It looks aesthetically pleasing and also a little bit easier on the hands. And then during the sanding process, I had to go around and just finish up those edges before it was glued together. I did some of the preliminary round over, and then once it was all glued up, I had to go around and hand sand all the remainder of it so that all of the edging matches up. I wanted that bottom to float in there, so I used dowels. So I had to go over to the lathe, and because I couldn't go to the store and buy a dowel cutter or a plug cutter, I had to turn them on the lathe. It was the only way that I could get the little bloodwood dowels made, just to actually go through the point, the extent of turning them on the lathe. And I think you'll find that the effects of the dowels and what they actually do is the 1/2 inch dowels hold the floating bottom in place. They didn't really want to glue it in place. I wanted it to float to allow for expansion and contraction that's going to happen with the hickory. The finishing, I used my favorite finish again. So I put on the 2 good coats of shellac. I put on, let it sit for 24 hours, and I sanded it 400 grit and then put a reduced coat on it, 100% reduction with mineral spirits in the shellac, and put a final coat on it. I also added some strips along the bottom, not only to act as a leg, but also as further support for the insert, the plywood insert that becomes the base. And it's just glued and brad nailed in place. So this is the final product. As you can see here, turned out very good, and I hope Glenn gets a lot of use out of it through the years. I know I have with mine. Happy graduation, Pink Belly, and I hope you get out of the hospital soon. And I hope that we all get through this COVID-19 stuff. We will at the end of the day. Hopefully we keep as many as our family members as we can. Paramedic Dan, signing off for now. Oh, Brent, by the way, don't worry, your bowl is coming. Hopefully this year.